presented by Max Prairie Wings, America's premier waterfowl outfitter.
Hey guys, this is Brad Allen, three-time world's duck calling champion, lifelong duck hunter, and owner of Elite Duck Calls, and welcome to the Art of Flight Control. Now, when we started our company, we had a vision to not only make the best sounding duck calls on the market, we also wanted to help our customers be the best call operators and hunters that they could be. And that's what's brought us to this recording studio today. Now, when I was learning to call as a youngster, I had very limited options. Basically, I had two choices of a duck call to blow, which was the two that were carried in the local hardware store, and occasionally I could borrow an instructional record or a cassette tape to give me some duck calling instruction. The problem with these were that they took you right through the basics, but they left you hanging with a lot of questions and a lot of work left to do. So what we're setting out to do is to produce a comprehensive program that'll take you all the way through the very basics, on through advanced calling and application in the duck blind. So get your calls out, get comfortable, because we got a lot to talk about. Now, when we started at Elite, we designed three basic calls. The first one is a single reed call that we call the Freak, and it actually got its name because of its versatility. This call will get extremely loud on top, and it will also get very soft and whiny on the bottom. It's a really great do-it-all duck call. Now, the second design that we have is the Cache. Now, with the Cache design, it's a single reed call as well, but the bore is a little bit smaller. And what that does is it gives you a little extra back pressure. Now, the volume on it is good, but it's not quite as loud as the Freak, but it allows you to get a little bit softer so that you could show a little bit more finesse, especially on the bottom end. And our third design is the Edge. And the Edge is a double reed call that it has a lot of versatility, just like the Freak. It has good volume on top, it will get soft, but it also gives you the user friendliness of a double reed. Now, we're also really excited about three new calls that we've got coming out for 2016. Now, the first one is called the Elite Butcher, and it is a true cut down style call. The second call, the Murder, is a hybrid between a cut down style and a J-frame. It allows you to do the really hard bark but still have the finesse that you get out of your standard J-frame calls. And the third call we're calling the Elite Legacy, and this is a competition style call that's got a lot of volume, ring on the top, great for Main Street type competition, and it's also a great hunting call for an open water situation. Now, with the basic parts of the duck call, first we have the barrel. And the barrel is a part where you're going to press your mouth to this and it's going to hold the insert. Now, the barrel itself does not affect the sound very much. Now, the real business end of the call is the insert. And the parts of the insert, we have the tone board here where the reed sits, and the shape of the tone board has a lot to do with the sound of the call. The reed, usually made of mylar, is what vibrates to produce the sound. Now, there is a channel that goes through the insert that we refer to as the bore, and as the bore goes out, it's going to get slightly bigger, and we refer to that as the exhaust. Now, we make our calls out of a variety of materials. Now, our top of the line calls are made out of acrylic, and these are turned from solid acrylic rods. Now, with acrylic, you get a very true sound. It's a very crisp sound. The acrylic is a hard material. There's no swelling. The call does not absorb moisture or anything like that, so the call is always true sounding. Now, some people prefer wooden calls, and we turn the wood calls out of a variety of wood species like Coca-Cola or Bodark, African Blackwood, and some others. And you get pluses and minuses with wooden calls. One of the obvious pluses is the beauty. They're very pretty calls. You get to see the wood grain. The tone is a little bit different, has a little bit more of a mellow sound to it. The downside to wood is that you have to deal with moisture absorption. So as you're blowing the call, you're putting moisture into the call, you can get some swelling of the wood that can make some slight tonal changes or may make the call a little bit difficult in removing the insert from the barrel at times. Now, let's talk about the proper way to hold these calls. Now, we're going to start by taking the insert and we're going to put it in the web space between the thumb and the index finger, just like that. And then you can curl your hand around and we're going to open the hand up just a little bit. Now, when you press it to your lips, just imagine that you're drinking out of a Coke. You're going to take the barrel and you're going to place it to your bottom lip, And it's going to go slightly to the inside of the lips, not just pressed on the outside, slightly to the inside to make sure that you get the air sealed off like this. Now, when we're talking about blowing into a duck call, it is all about air presentation. And for you guys that are already experienced duck callers, you may want to go through this with us, because 9 times out of 10, if I'm working with somebody and they're having trouble making a sound on their call, it is usually because they're presenting their air incorrectly. Now, when we talk about air presentation, what we want to do with the call is we don't want to blow loose air into it like this. If you do that, you're never going to get the sounds that you're looking for. What we want to do is work with air that's under pressure. And what I mean by that is simply this. Take a deep breath and hold it. At that point, when you're holding your breath, you now have air that's under pressure. And now we just need to work on how we're going to release that air gradually and push it through the call. Now we want to maintain our airway in an open position, and we're also going to talk about how we use our tongue, how we have the tongue sitting in the mouth, and how we use it to begin and shut off our notes.
Hello. Killer Drakes, boys.
Now, when we're talking about the basic quack, keep in mind that everything we do with the duck call is based off of the quack. So don't just blow through this. This is very important. With the exception of the feed, everything else is built on this. So with the basic quack, we're going to pressurize our air, take a deep breath and hold it, and we're going to make sure that the air comes up from the diaphragm. Now, I like to tell people to use a word whenever they're presenting air into the call. Some people will say use the word hut or quit or ack, anything like that. And obviously, we're not vocalizing into the call. This is just to help you with your air presentation. What I like to use is the words gwit and quack. And I know those are not real words, but that's what we do here in Arkansas. We don't have a word for something, we'll just make one up. So if I'm using the word gwit or the word quack, and I'll alternate them so you can hear that there's a little bit of a difference. That gives us 2 slight variations of the basic quack. Okay, now so you understand what I'm actually putting into the call. I'm going to turn the call around backwards so you can hear what I am actually putting into the call. All right, now if you'll notice, you hear a grunt on the first of the note. You hear a grunt and then it's straight air coming after that. And this is the reason that I like using the word gwit or quack, because that G sound triggers you to get that grunt on the front of the note. Now, what you do not want to do is growl into the call. So you do not hear any voice in it like this. You notice how you hear my voice. If I do that through the call, then it makes it way too coarse. So you want to stay away from that. Just a simple grunt and then air. Now you'll notice whenever I'm blowing the quack that I'm opening and closing my hand. And we refer to this as throwing notes. Now, if I leave my hand open, and this is how I'd recommend that you start blowing the quack. Just leave your hand open like this, and we're going to do the gwit sound and quack sound. Now, one thing that I can do to make it sound more natural is to close my hand and open it. You'll notice how it gives it a more natural quack sound. Now all I'm doing is when I close my hand down, it's putting back pressure on the call, and when I open the hand, it's taking the pressure away. And what you want to do is just barely catch the front of the note before you open your hand to give it that natural sound. Now I'm going to exaggerate it. This is going to sound terrible, but this is what you're trying to do. But I'm going to catch the front of the note. Just gives it a more natural ducky sound. All right, so let's practice together. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blow a quack, and then I want you to blow one right behind me and try to match my sounds, okay? So let's just alternate. So, gwit, quack, keep working on this until you get it perfect. All right, now let's take the quack and let's put it series together and make a basic cadence. Now, with a cadence also known as a greeting call, this is how ducks actually call to one another. Now, the best explanation that I have seen in trying to teach someone to blow a cadence is to take a basic quack, and it's just like putting it to the nursery rhyme, Three Blind Mice, okay? We're gonna start with 3 notes. And for you young guys that have never heard of a nursery rhyme, don't know what we're talking about with 3 blind mice, just Google it, okay? It's just gonna be 3 notes that are gonna descend. 3 blind mice. All right, now I want you to do that with me. 3 notes, 3 blind mice, and drop down. I'll do it, and then you follow behind me. All right, now that you've got the 3-note series down, let's push it to 5. And most of the time when mallards are blowing a cadence, it's usually going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 notes. So go into 5 notes. And just think about a musical scale. You're starting with the top note, and you're just stair-stepping your way down. All right, now practice that with me. Let's just alternate just like before. Good. All right, now let's push it to 7 notes. All right, do that with me. All right, good. Now, let's go ahead and let's push it to 10. Most of the time, you're not going to use this many notes, but this will help you gain control. So we'll go 10 notes. Let's alternate just like before. Now, when you're listening to live ducks, you'll notice that they have a lot of variation in their cadences. Sometimes they have higher pitches, lower pitches, sometimes they're faster, slower. So if we want to sound like more than one duck, we can blow the cadence faster, like this, or we can blow it slower by extending the front notes just a little bit more. So faster cadence, slower cadence. All right, let's practice that together. Let's just alternate just like before. So faster cadence. And then a slower one. Good. Now, keep in mind, ducks are just like people. They have different voices and they speak at different speeds. All right, now let's move into the hail call. With a hail call, You're trying to attract ducks that are at a long distance. They're a long distance from you, or they are really high in the air. And what you're trying to do is just get their attention. Now, the interesting thing is that a hail call is not something that a mallard hen is actually going to do. When you're listening to ducks on the water, you're going to hear them quacking, shorter cadences, contented sounds, things like that. But you're never going to see a live duck make a really long call trying to attract other ducks that are a long distance. So what you're trying to do is just get the duck's attention and get them to look your way. And most likely they're only going to hear a portion of this. So not only are they at a long distance, think about the wind noise that they're experiencing when they're flying, especially the higher they are. Just think about if you were driving down the road in your vehicle and you stuck your head out the window, what you would hear. So we're going to blow a long call, and we're just hoping that the ducks will hear a portion of this and they will look our way. And it sounds a little bit something like this. Now, in order to be able to blow a hail call properly, you have to understand how to open your airway. And if you notice when you try this call and the first note sounds off or if it has a squeak to it, what you're doing is you're closing your airway down. Sometimes we've nicknamed this blowing with an open throat or pinching off your throat. Now, whenever I started getting into competitive calling seriously, this was a problem that I had. When I grew up, I overgrunted into the call and I also closed down the airway. And I had to learn to blow with an open throat in order to get the correct sounds. Now, here's a way to think about it. Take your hand and just blow air onto your hand. All right, the air is going to feel a little bit cool to you. Now I want you to take your hand and imagine that this is a small compact mirror, and I want you to fog it up. All right, when you do that, you'll notice that the air feels hotter against your hand. And when you're fogging the mirror, your throat has to relax, so your airway's in a relaxed position. Now, we're not going to put air into a call like we're fogging up a mirror, but this is the way that your throat or your airway needs to feel whenever you're hitting your first note. So with the hail, let's start with the first note, and remember, it's just like with the quack when we said gwick or quack. Let's start with the G sound, and we'll start with a quack, and we're going to build up pressure on it until we can hit that first note of a hail call like this. Whenever you've got that first note and you can hit it solid like that and it's smooth and it's not breaking, then you know you're blowing with your throat open or an open airway. All right, so let's do some practice with a hail call now. So let's start with the build-up. Okay, build up again. All right, once you get to where you can build up, and that's something that's probably going to take some time. You're going to want to work on that for a while. But once you get to where you can build up, then see if you can just pick up the call and hit the first note. So hit the note, put the call down, pick the call up, and if you hit the first note and it breaks on you, just go back to the build-up again until you get the feel for it. All right, so practice on that, and then let's work on doing the entire hail call. And keep in mind with the hail call, they're hearing the first notes. If they are really far off, they're not going to hear the notes on the back. So you don't have to completely finish the hail all the way out when they're a great distance away. As they get closer, then those lower notes become more critical. So let's just blow some hail calls. All right, you go. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, let's do one more. Okay, good.
Kill him.
Okay, next is the comeback call. And this is a call that we hope that we're not going to use too often in the field, because when we're doing this, the ducks are in the process of leaving. Now, sometimes people will refer to a little quick cadence. As the ducks are circling and they go overhead, they'll blow a little short cadence to get them to turn, and they refer to that as the comeback. And that's not incorrect, but at that point the duck is still showing interest. You're just turning them with a short cadence. What I'm talking about in this instance with the comeback, the ducks have lost interest. They have been spooked a little, or something is not looking right in your decoy spread, or maybe they've got their eye on another area. You're about to lose these ducks, and you've got to do something in desperation to get their attention and get them to come back to you. So what I like to do is when the ducks are still fairly close, but I can see that they've lost interest, I will start off with something that is shorter and more aggressive to try to get them to turn. So initially the comeback may sound like this. All right, if that doesn't work, and as they continue to get further away, it's almost like the hail call. We're going to really get loud, we're really going to get on them, and like I said, there's really nothing that you can do wrong in this scenario because you're losing them. The chances of getting them back are probably slim, but we're going to give it a try. So as they get further away, all right, we're doing everything in our power to turn the ducks and get them to come back. So when you're practicing this, really, there's no guidelines, no rules, but start with faster, aggressive notes. You don't even have to finish it. You're just trying to get them to hitch, hear you a little bit, and turn to come back. Okay, let's talk about the feeding call now. Everybody loves blowing the feeding call. This is what people, they enjoy doing this the most. They feel like this is what makes you the rock star of the duck blind when you have a good feeding call. Now, let's understand what the feeding call is. Now, we're always guessing to an extent on why these ducks are making certain noises. I don't think that the feed call that we hear necessarily means that they are actually feeding. Think about whenever you're on the ground and you hear ducks flying over. I've heard this referred to as gaveling. As ducks are flying over, you may hear. All right, obviously they're not eating anything. They're way up there in the air flying. The best explanation that I've heard, or what I agree with the most, right or wrong, is I've heard biologists write about this and say that this is actually spacing call. So, and it makes sense. If they're flying up in the air, if you'll notice, when they're in a V formation, they're not looking around. It's not like they look back and say, hey, tighten it up over there on the left side, or where'd you guys go? They are making this sound, and it keeps them together. It's basically saying, I'm right here, now where are you? It keeps the flock moving together. Now, this sound that they make when they're actually eating, a lot of people say that what they're doing is it's still a spacing call, but they are claiming a space. It's a little bit more aggressive. It's kind of like, this is my food right here in front of me. They're laying claim to it. And you can imagine, how would you feel? You're sitting there eating your dinner, someone reaches onto your plate, you're going to speak up. So they're claiming an area as they are feeding, and this sound will be a little bit more guttural, and sometimes it'll have some squeak to it. As food is going into the crawl, you'll get some changes in the sound. So when we talk about feed call, what we're actually talking about is a spacing call.
Kill them both.
Okay, now let's talk about three different styles of feed call. The first one I want to go into is the rolling feed. This is the one that most people are familiar with. So with a rolling feed like this, all right, what we're doing is we're saying the words ticka ticka or tuka tuka into the call. So if I'm going to say ticka ticka, I'm starting off with the T sound. So just like before, the tongue is up. The front part of the tongue is up on the roof of the mouth, right behind the front teeth, As you say the word tick, as it's cut off with the K, the back part of the tongue is going to come up and shut off the air toward the back of the palate. And then the sound is made as the tongue is going back up to the original starting position. Again, don't read too much into this. I just want you to understand that this is how these sounds are made, and learning to do the feed call is all about learning how to control your tongue, okay? Make up your own jokes from here. All right, so we're going to start off with ticka ticka. All right, so we want to start off learning slow and deliberate, and then we'll speed it up. All right, the most common mistake that people make is they try to go too fast. Now, if I go fast, I can go really fast doing it, but it doesn't sound good, because what happens is the notes will slur together. So if I go too fast, all right, my tongue's moving fast, but you can hear how bad that sounds. It just gets muddled. It sounds better if you'll slow down, and the best way to learn, start off real slow and deliberate. All right, now we talked about not putting any type of growl or anything like that into the call. And you still don't want to do it with the feed call, but you will notice if you're doing it right, there's a little bit of a hum. As you're putting air into the call, you will hear a little bit of a hum sound, kind of like this. All right, that's fine. Just make sure that you're not growling into the call. So ticka 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 and tuka 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 gives us two sounds, just like saying gwit and quack gives a little bit of a tone variation. Ticka and tuka gives us a little bit of tone variation with the feed call. So ticka ticka, tuka tuka. All right, now I can also move my hand a little bit, choke the notes down, and give a little bit, a little bit more tone variation. So ticka ticka, tuka tuka. All right, so let's do that drill together. Let's start off with ticka ticka ticka, and you do it right behind me. All right, now tuka tuka. Close your hand down to pinch down the note. Okay, and let's alternate ticka ticka and tuka tuka, opening the hand and bringing the hand down. Okay, good. All right, the next style of feed that I want you to learn is what we call stutter feed. Now, this is probably the most realistic sound to what a mallard is actually making when it's sitting on the water. And the word that I like to use is like tut 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 or cut cut cut. So just real short tones close together. Tut 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 or cut cut cut. All right, so if we spread it out, break it up a little bit, it's just kind of like the word implies, stutter. It's going to sound like this. Just like before, I can open my hand and close my hand down to change tones. All right, this gives you a more realistic feed. And I like to use this one as the ducks are getting in closer. Rolling feed is good for far away, can tend to sound mechanical, so we want to go to stutter feed as the ducks get in closer. This sounds a little bit more natural and realistic. All right, the final type of feed call that I want you to know is the broken feed. Now, really all this is to use the stutter feed, and we're going to draw it out with the notes in a longer series. And what we're trying to sound like is multiple ducks that are feeding on the water. Each individual duck doing the stutter feed at a distance, and a lot of them doing it at the same time is going to sound like broken feed. And some people refer to this as a feed chuckle. So same thing, we're going to say tut 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 or cook 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 cook, but we're going to run it for a longer period of time. So let's run the tut 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 sound. All right, and then cook 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 sound. All right, it's kind of like when you're a kid and you're playing machine gun. Tut 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 tut. All right, now that's harder to do than you think. And when you're starting off, it's kind of like learning to pat your head and rub your stomach at the same time. You're going to lose it. So you start off doing it, and if it gets away from you like this, if you have any episodes like that, start over again. Start a little bit slower, more deliberately, and then just speed it up. All right, same thing, open versus closed hand. Okay, now I want to teach you a trick that's going to make these feed calls sound a lot more natural. What we're going to do, we're going to put a sound in there that's mixed in that sounds like a quack mixed into the spacing call of a feed, okay? And we call this a drag. It's just like saying right in the middle of the feed call. So if we think about the rolling feed, and you're just going to run it like this. All right, if you're out hunting and you hear this sound, my advice to you is run, because that is not made by ducks. That is something man-made. Sounds way too mechanical. You may be getting shot at. So we can make it more natural by saying, if we're saying ticka ticka, we'll go ticka 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 ticka. All right, so it sounds like quacks that are mixed in. And if we do the rolling feed in shorter bursts and we add the drags in, ticka ticka and tuka tuka, with the sounds dragged out. All right, that makes it sound much more natural. And also my advice would be, use the rolling feed at ducks that are at a distance. And as they start to get close, go to the stutter feed, because I think it will sound a lot more natural. But this helps you sound like multiple ducks on the water. We can also add the drags into stutter feed as well to make it more realistic. So tut 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 with the sound in it. All right, and we do the cuck cuck sound with the drag in there. Open the hand, close it, add the drags in. Just makes everything sound more realistic. Now, if we add the drags to broken feed, I think this is where we can really sound like a lot of ducks at a distance. So we're gonna run out the tut 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 sound just like the stutter feed. We're gonna make a long run of it, but we're gonna add the drags in, open and close the hand. We're gonna try to sound like a lot of ducks on the water. All right, so you don't want to do that when the ducks are really close. That's a little bit too aggressive. But if they're flying high and you want to sound like a lot of ducks that are on the water, it works really effective when you're in an area where ducks are feeding a lot. And if you have a lot of duck decoys out, that is really going to help you too. So real aggressive, run it long, lots of drags. Now that concludes our section on basic duck calling. And let me encourage you to make sure that you master these points before you move on to the advanced section. Now for you guys that are new to duck calling, keep in mind that Rome wasn't built in a day. This is going to take time. It's going to take practice. If you find yourself getting frustrated and all you want to do is throw your duck call, that just means that you're doing it right. All right, so get in there, do the practice. Let's build some character.